Coming up, the high cost of higher education. Don't let the price tag prevent you from pursuing your dreams. We'll explore college affordability issues and what students and parents need to know about applying for financial aid. Plus, to be young, gifted, and black, a theatrical tribute to Lorraine Hansberry. Next on Around Prince George's.
Welcome to this edition of Around Prince George's. I'm Charlene Dukes, president of Prince George's Community College. What does it cost to go to college? How much financial aid is available? The answers are complex, but I believe higher education is worth the investment.
For many students, deciding to attend college can be exciting and confusing. Some wonder, can I afford to go? And why is it so expensive? The biggest cost is tuition, but students also have to think about textbooks and fees. And if they're going away, they'll have to pay for room and board, a meal plan, and sometimes even health care. Community college can be an affordable option, but students still have to budget for food and transportation. With so many schools and career programs to choose from, how can students make the right choices based on their financial situation? And what can colleges do to keep costs down?
Here with me today for our Higher Education Roundtable is Dr. Walter Bumpus, President and CEO of the American Association of Community Colleges, and Dr. Carol Gary Snyder, President of the Association of American Colleges and Universities. Welcome back to the program. Today we're going to talk a little bit about college and the affordability of it. We know that there is certainly a lot of discussion, a lot of press around the rising cost of college educations. So tell me, I think it's worth the investment, but what is it that our public really needs to know?
Great point, great point. First and foremost, our colleges have had to increase their costs for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think it's like 42 of the 50 states decreased the amount of funding they were putting into state appropriations for higher education, which really forced colleges with really no option other than to look, unfortunately, to our students for more tuition and costs. The question, though, turns for me on not what is the cost to attend college, but what's the cost to not attend college, because I do believe that our businesses are looking for a more skilled and trained workforce. So we've got to, at least in community colleges, we're looking at that. How can we make, and more importantly, keep tuition affordable for most of our residents and our citizens? And that's really been a challenge for many colleges, because when students come to our campuses, they don't expect anything less in regards to technology, as you would know here at PG. They don't expect less in terms of the quality of faculty we're providing them, the lab experiences and such. So we've got to maintain that quality of what we do, while at the same time trying to balance that with the cost factor. What many colleges are doing to address that, and you didn't ask that question, but let me just speak to that, is that they're going with many more adjunct faculty. And that, in my opinion, doesn't have to be any way to diminish the quality of what we do. We've got to continue to make sure we're keeping them well trained, because we've got a lot of very highly qualified adjunct faculty we're using. But the whole affordability issue becomes key and critical for many of our families at this particular time.
And Carol, what's your perspective on this?
Well, I want to pick up on something that Walter said, and that's the high cost of not going to college. College is expensive, and there is no question that it is a huge challenge for families who are in anything other than the very top income category to make it work, and for students themselves to make it work. It's a huge challenge. But when you look at what happens if you don't have a college degree, if you haven't had college study, and you look at what's happening to jobs that don't require college, they're disappearing. The more routinized the work is, the easier it is to give it to a machine or to send it overseas. So if you just look at what's happening in the economy, it's the jobs that didn't require higher education that are fastest to disappear in a downturn, and they don't come back. So the only real pathway to a middle-class life at this point is to make sure that you get a higher education. And then the question is, how are you going to pay for it? And in an earlier discussion, we talked about how important it is for students to involve themselves in research skills. The fact of the matter is, finding out how to pay for college is a research project, and you need to come out of high school with enough investigative intelligence to figure out where the sources of money are. There's loans. There's Pell Grants. There's other sorts of aid that's available at the institution. It may be in your county or your state. There may be other programs that you're eligible for. And there's the recognition that certain jobs actually will forgive part of your loans if you get into them. But finding out what's right for you, what you can afford, that's the key thing that students have to work on. It is a research challenge, but the investment of time and energy in college is worth it. And there's no investment you will make in your life that will pay richer rewards over time.
Yes.
If I could just add one other point, it's really a societal factor that, and there's been lots written about that, if you were born poor in this country today, you're more apt to die poor, and the only intervention will be higher education. You start to look at, I think Carol made a point earlier, in an earlier discussion about the jobs and the educational requirements for those jobs. We can't afford not to have people trained. And in my humble opinion, I think we're moving along that line, and we're really trying to cast a bigger net to make sure that where one's born, their zip code they're born in doesn't predetermine where they end up in this life. And so, in my opinion, again, I just think we've got to offer those educational opportunities by better educating folks about resources out there. College won't be any cheaper, I can tell you that. So we've got to look at ways in which we can help a student and a parent cobble together, and that's literally what many parents are doing, the resources they need to make sure that their kids and that they in turn are getting an education themselves.
And you know, I think about many of us are engaged in these studies now that talk about the economic benefits of a college education, and we're able to look at our graduates and sort of track them relative to their employment opportunities and how those employment opportunities certainly help the counties and the states in which they live. And what we know at Prince George's Community College, just by being here and with our employee base, that we add probably close to $50 million to the local economy, because we're spending college resources in the community. Our employees, about 65%, live in the community, so they're also spending their paychecks here. The other thing we know that for every credit that a student is successful in, that the return on that is about $164 per credit hour. Wow. We know what the social cost avoidances are, that it's about $3.1 million, because you know, you're not talking about people that you have to help in other ways when we think about the social services network. And then we know that if we look at all of our graduates over the last 20 years or so, that we're putting back probably about $387 million into the local economy as well as the state economy when we talk about taxes and other ways that people spend their money. And I think that there's more information that we can provide as colleges and universities, that we sort of juxtapose the cost to attend versus what the long-term benefits are, even if we only think about it from a dollar and cents perspective.
Right, and you're really going to the fundamental question that our society is facing and that individuals are facing as they think about higher education for themselves. And you see constantly on magazine covers, for example, the question, is college worth it? Is there some other route? And the answer is no. We should not even waste time on the discussion of whether college is not worth it. What you're giving us is all the evidence that it's good for society, it's good for communities, it's necessary for the economy, and the payoff for individuals themselves over the long term just goes up, up, up. But there's a but to that, because the issue that we've talked about in another discussion and the issue of affordability go together. College pays off for you if you complete.
If you complete.
College does not pay off if you drop out. If you have loans and no degree, loans and no credential, you have the worst of all possible outcomes. So students need to know not just where to find the money. It is there to be found, although it is hard, as Walter says, these days to cobble it together. It can be done. But you also need to find your way onto a pathway within the college experience that is going to increase your likelihood of completing. And we know a lot in higher education about the characteristics of a high-quality experience. Students need to find out what's in their own best interest and make sure that they're taking the right curriculum for their own long-term success.
If I could just add one final little comment on this one. I think for a lot of other reasons, we've got to continue to focus on this higher education need. Businesses will not move to a community if they can't have a trained workforce. And so for college presidents like yourself and others, they're really having to make sure that they're talking to business about what their needs are, aligning your training with those needs. And many of our communities are becoming much more diverse than they were 10, 15, 20 years ago. So we've got to train everyone for those jobs.
And you know, we're going to pick up on that point after we take this very short break.
Prince George's Community College isn't just a place that offers more than 200 academic, workforce development, and continuing education programs. It's the first step toward the career of your dreams. It's a community of people who want you to succeed. It's where degrees are earned and potential is realized. Apply and register today. Call 301-336-6000. Prince George's Community College, transforming lives.
Body language can tell you all sorts of things. Like someone is having a stroke. Know the sudden signs. Learn fast. Face drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulty. Time to call 911 and get them to a hospital immediately. Learn the body language and spot a stroke fast.
So let's continue our discussion of college affordability, and let's pick up on the point that you were making, Walter, about what businesses look for, especially when they think about moving into a community.
What we're finding, and we've had lots of meetings with corporate leaders, is that one, they really want us to talk to them more. They really believe that as they're looking for, obviously, the technical skills, the soft skills, and we talked about it earlier, are so very, very important, but they really are looking to our colleges, our universities, to help them in training a workforce. Many businesses won't either move or stay in a community where they're not getting the workforce they desperately need. And with that comes obviously good schools and good communities, right, but they're really laser focused on making sure that they've got a trained workforce. And again, I said it earlier, many of our communities have become much more diverse. And so you're talking about not only training those citizens that are here, you got immigrants, you got others that need to be trained for those jobs that are in that community. And so that really puts a lot of pressure on a college president like yourself to make sure that you're kind of doing it all, transferring students, putting students in the world of work, making sure that the folks that you put into the world of work are ready to go to work. And so there are a lot of challenges.
And responding to the needs. Now, you know, Carol, I could not let that short, brief discussion go by without having you talk about the Employer-Educator Compact with AAC and you.
Right, exactly. It is really important that educators be working with employers to make sure we all have our eyes on the long-term goals and not just the short-term needs. So AAC and you has done a lot of work with employers, surveying them and then talking with them at small group tables like this one. But most recently, we've actually worked with our presidents to form a compact between employers and educators in which the employers themselves describe exactly what it is they're looking for in someone, not just for the first job, not just the job that gets you in the door, but someone who will add value to the company or enterprise as the enterprise moves forward. So you can find all this at our website, aacu.org, and look for the Employer Research, the Employer Educator Compact. You'll get a very complete picture there of what it is that employers most value in a well-prepared community college or college graduate. And we all have to have our eyes on the long-term prize, not just the affordability, not just the degree, but actually making sure that our students learn what they need to know to go the distance in their careers, in the economy, and in their own lives.
So I think about solutions to all of this, because even as we're here having this discussion, we talk about the fact that in many ways there's misinformation out there. There are ways that we have to help students and their families pull together resources to help them pay for college. So let's talk a little bit about what some of the remedies are out there that we think, A, can help reduce the cost of higher education without reducing quality or access, and then what colleges and universities are doing to become a real partnership and helping students pull it together. And I'll start with a few examples. I think about what happens here in Maryland, where we have every year something called College Goal Sunday, and it happens during football season, which may be you get that visual of a goal. But they pull financial aid personnel together from all across the state, 2-year and 4-year public and private institutions, and we set up a shop, so to speak, in our communities, and we actually help students and parents as they come in with their tax information to help them complete the financial aid application for free financial aid, and it doesn't matter what institution you're applying to. So that you will have staff there from Prince George's Community College who are really helping families where their intent is to go to the University of Maryland College Park, or to go to American University or Howard University, or maybe even across the country. So how we're really pulling our resources together to say, we know that this thing called college is extremely important, and how you pay for it is important. So we're going to make sure that all of the experts are in the rooms across the state of Maryland to help families do that.
There's another part of this too. I mean, the work you're doing is incredible and so valuable, so needed. But everyone listening to this program is a voter, or almost everyone listening, and we need to be voting for investment in the resources that help people go to college. Walter said it before, and it needs to be said again and again. There has been a steady disinvestment by our legislatures across the country in support for higher education at all levels. And the ones in the firing line on that part of disinvestment are community colleges. So we need to vote to make sure that the money we need to support long-term student and societal success is actually there.
So when we think about that, I know that we've all had the pleasure of being in the company of representatives from the U.S. Department of Education, and we've all heard them talk about the importance of college education and also the importance of keeping tuition low. So, you know, we talk about voting, but we also need to talk about what are the partnerships we have to provide information to the department, so as they're getting information out to the public, that we know that it's true, it's accurate, it's applicable. So can you talk about what both of you have been able to do in terms of your work with your associations?
I'll start with that one because we've got some things that we're doing currently that I think are certainly applicable to your question. One is that we are doing this 21st Century Initiative, and we've got implementation teams, 9 of them in fact, comprised of 112 college presidents, chancellors, board members, and others that are working on various aspects of the 7 recommendations that were made in our report. But one of those is a team focused on advocacy that we're using to do just that. Work with state legislatures, national organizations, as well as provide information to the U.S. Department of Education and Labor.
Well, you know, Dr. Bumpus, I'm going to tell you that we are surely reaching that point in our program where we're going to have to invite you back another time. And I know, Carol, that AAC&U is doing much of the same as we work with 2-year and 4-year institutions across the United States of America. I certainly want to thank both of you for being here today. We've covered a lot of issues: college readiness, college completion, college affordability, and we're going to continue our discussion later with a focus on how students themselves are paying for college. We'll share that with our viewers on our next episode of Around Prince George's. We'll say to our audience, don't go away, stay tuned to find out how you can apply for financial aid at Prince George's Community College.
Prince George's Community College has prepared me to transfer to a 4-year university from its rigorous academics and the experiences I've had here on campus.
Enroll today at pgcc.edu. Prince George's Community College, transforming lives.
Are you getting this, honey?
Oh, prime time. We are rolling.
All right, Mama's gonna bring it home. Mama's gonna bring it home. Okay.
Come on, watch this guy.
Oh, backwards!
Oh, don't. Oh.
It went into Bob and Carol's yard. Oh, no? Okay, here it comes.
Oh, Mom!
Challenge your kids to be active and eat healthy.
All right, let's see what you can do. Let's go.
They might surprise you.
Let's go.
Search We Can for more ideas on how you and your kids can get healthy together.
Here at the GED Pep Talk Center, we have pep talkers standing by to get you motivated for your GED diploma. Get your GED pep talk and find free classes at yourged.org.
Financial aid, I used to think it was like really difficult to do. I could never usually get it right. They always send it back to me. But I mean, now that I understand it, I think it's a really big help. And I appreciate the government for doing it, because a lot of people don't have that kind of money just to be spending on college. And nowadays, college is something that you definitely need. So financial aid is a big help.
Going to college should be made and kept affordable so that a lot more people have opportunity to access higher education.
My thoughts are, I think college is pretty expensive for students, and we find a hard time to pay for classes and get books and stationery and all that stuff. So with financial aid, that does help.
I'm not a U.S. citizen, so it's way more than your average student would have to pay. I know a lot of them pay less, and it's beneficial for them, but it's like going to a full-time university for me.
Prince George's Community College is a great value for the residents of our county, but students often need financial aid to help cover expenses. What is financial aid, and what is financial need?
Well, financial aid is any type of assistance that a student or family gets to help offset the expenses for coming to college. Financial need is basically the difference between what it costs to come to an institution and what a family has to pay.
Do you think families really understand that difference?
No, families don't. Typically, families have what they consider their need to be, and then financial aid has an application process to determine what we think their need really is.
So the application process, it involves filling out the FAFSA. So tell us with the FAFSA what those letters stand for, and then how important it is to really determining eligibility for aid.
Well, the FAFSA stands for the Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And the application is really important because you can fill out that one application at any school to qualify for all of the federal programs, and that would include the most popular ones like the Pell Grant and student loans, as well as work study. In addition to that, most schools use that application as well to determine institutional eligibility for financial aid as well.
Some schools or colleges and universities offer what we call discretionary. They have discretionary funds to help maybe fill the gap between what students are eligible for through federal programs or scholarships, and again, the cost of college.
That is correct. And schools also have other types of programs as well to help fill that gap. And typically, for filling the gaps, a lot of them will use things like work study to help fill the gap for students who don't have enough to quite cover the cost.
And work study, if I recall correctly, means that a student actually has a certain number of hours per week that he or she is working on campus, and that's part of the financial aid package.
That is correct, and at most institutions, the students do receive payment for those services where they work, and in addition to that, they also receive valuable work experience while learning and working in the educational environment.
So what are the steps that parents and their families or students who are independent, because I know that there are dependent students and independent students, and maybe you want to define that for us for a moment, and then talk about the steps for applying for financial aid and why it's clearly important. And I know that they use technology a lot now in order to get parents and students through that process.
Well, absolutely. And basically the difference between a dependent and independent student is the age. If you're 24 or older, you are automatically an independent student. And likewise, if you're a graduate student, you're also automatically independent. And there's some other criteria that would make a person independent, but typically those are the most common ones that make a student independent. When you're looking at filling out the FAFSA, or the Free Application for Federal Student Aid, that is an online process, and typically I would say probably 99% of the students who fill out that application apply online. And that is wonderful because it does have built-in edit checks so that the mistakes that families used to make years ago by doing it with paper, they no longer happen. Also, with that process, now there's a mechanism in place where certain families, if they meet the criteria, they can actually have their IRS data transferred into the FAFSA, so they don't even have to put that information in. So a lot of technology has come into play with the FAFSA and that application process to make it a lot smoother and quicker for families.
So it seems to me that what students really need to know is that their states may have deadlines too, because states give out financial aid in addition to the federal government. So I think that what we've done today is at least understood how important it is to apply for financial aid and all that's available in it. And I encourage all students to explore your options when it comes to financing your education. As we close, here are some highlights from To Be Young, Gifted, and Black, a tribute to playwright and author Lorraine Hansberry, performed by students in our theater department. Enjoy, and thanks for watching Around Prince George's.
Mariella, listen, have I got news? My name is Peggy Yates. I'm an associate professor here at Prince George's Community College, and I'm also the director of To Be Young, Gifted, and Black. This is a staged reading of a play that is based on a book of Lorraine Hansberry's words as they were compiled by her literary executor and husband, Robert Nemiroff.
I think she's a very strong person, because to be able to be in that period of time and to be able to have that type of voice where you feel like this should be said, because a lot of people were hiding a lot of things that weren't right.
Society has to make rules to protect itself, to protect children.
Listen, haven't you ever heard of contraceptives? Well, what do you think they are there for?
One of the things that I actually love about the theater program is that it's not really a school setting. It's almost a on-the-job setting.
I've learned basically from Lorraine Hansberry, like, say what's in your heart, say what's on your mind, say something that you mean, because whatever you say can help the next person.
I actually learned a lot about her. As many people know about her, it's usually from A Raisin in the Sun, and that was the only thing that I'd known that she'd ever done. A lot of her other writings people may not know as well. A Sign in Sidney Brustein's Window is another play, What Use Are Flowers, and The Drinking Gourd, which was a television script that she wrote that was never actually aired. She was relatable because much of what she was going through then, we're kind of experiencing now, just in a different forum.
Doesn't he wear anything? Don't you? Mariella, you'll have to get an abortion and all that.
Nope, not going to have it. Want the baby. So far it's been really interesting, and it's a really community kind of effect, because I know all of my professors and I call them all by their first name, and everybody is really supportive of each other, even us castmates. Like we have tons of fun.